Hello game fans and welcome to another review from the Steam Chamber. Today we're taking a look at Deep Silver's Dead Island Riptide. For those of you unfamiliar, this is a 4-player cooperative zombie survival game in the first person, and this title takes place immediately after the events of the first game. You are playing the same 4 characters plus 1 new character, and for those of you familiar, the last game ended with the players getting off the island of Banoi, and the start of this game takes off immediately after that and begins with our people being washed up on a new island of Panai. Unfortunately, the zombie outbreak that had struck Banoi has also struck this new island. So yet again it is up to our now 5 immune characters to find out what's going on and to hopefully get off this island. Now, as I said, this is a new island, so there are some slight differences from the first game. However, the game will look and feel very familiar to the first one. Now, as it follows on immediately from the first game, you do have the option of loading your save file from the first game and loading your character stats. However, if you choose not to do this, or you don't have a save file to load or import, then it doesn't matter, because when you choose your character, you have, I think, around 15 skill points to spend on various different skills. So you actually are able to unlock quite a few skills straight away. So you aren't starting back at square one again, which is a nice feature. Now, to do this, you can either choose between 3 pre-assigned selections for your skill points, or you can just completely choose to do it manually yourself, which is what I chose to do. Now, I chose to play through as the Blade Specialist. You've still got the Heavy Weapon Specialist, the Thrown Weapon Specialist, and the Gun Specialist, and you've now got a new Unarmed Specialist, which is what Emiholek is playing through. Now, in terms of mechanics, nothing in the game has changed. The zombies still have the same hit points. The combat is still very much the same. The only difference is there are some additions to the roster of zombie, such as new zombies like the Grenadiers, which, as their name suggests, throw grenades at you. The game has also had some other tweaks. For the start, you generally have noticeably more cash than you did in the first game. A big criticism of the first game was that you were often scrimping and saving to try and buy upgrades or modifications. Pretty much generally every time you went to the upgrade bench, you would run out of cash after upgrading a weapon or two. That's really not a problem in this game. This game seems to absolutely throw money at you, and you'll often find yourself walking around with $30,000 to $40,000. Also, while on the subject of upgrades, there are upgrade benches absolutely everywhere. So if there is a particular weapon that you like using, you favour using over anything else, then not to worry, because you will generally be able to use the same weapon consistently, as you will never be far from an upgrade bench to repair it or upgrade it. There also seem to be noticeably more mods in this title than the previous title as well. Unfortunately, a lot of them are the same. You generally find that there are a lot of variations of the electric or poison mods, with just sort of slightly stronger ones available. I would like to have seen a little bit more variation, but still quite fun. You're still able to create quite a few things. There are another 2 additions to the game as well. One of those is Dead Zones, which is an area of the map, normally a building, which you have to clear of all zombies, including something of a mini-boss. You'll often find the odd blueprint and loot items in these buildings as well. And another one of the additions is the requirement to defend your safe zones periodically. Now, this was something that was missing from the first game. You had these safe zones, but they were never really in any danger after you originally cleared them. However, in this version you will have to regularly barricade the entrances and defend it from waves of zombie attacks. As I was the Blade Weapon Specialist, I would like to have seen a little bit more variation for blades, rather than just electricity and poison. There is also more selection when it comes to weapons throughout the game. You might have a bit of an encounter with guns at the start, but after that prologue, like the first game, you will not see a gun for quite some time. However, there are a lot more melee weapons available, and I ended up playing through a big chunk of the game with an axe. Now, of course, the Dead Island games are all about multiplayer and co-op. These games have been specifically designed with cooperative play in mind. and the co-op works fantastically. I had absolutely zero issues with multiplayer. Never had a problem connecting. Me and Emiholic never had a problem connecting to each other. The only time we were presented with an issue was when Emiholic loaded into one of our games, and before I could join him, it jumped into a scripted mission, and as a result, when I did join him, our missions were out of sync, and then it would not let me add new missions to my profile. I could play it, but it wouldn't save it to my profile. The way to remedy this was to jump out and to just jump back in. However, that wasn't a problem with the multiplayer so much as just a bit of unfortunate timing, although personally I'd like to blame Emiholic. As before, you can choose to either join a friend or join a random who is close to your mission level, and jumping in and out of games from your own is really, really very simple and really smooth as well. And there were times as well when I was on one part of the map and Emiholic was on another part of the map, and there really were no issues with lag or latency at all. Now, graphically speaking, this is by no means the best looking game out there. The game hasn't really seen any noticeable graphical changes. It's using the same engine as last time around, and the textures look pretty much identical. Actually, notably bad is the water textures. The water graphics look fairly dated. However, it still can be a nice looking game, especially when you get to have a look over the larger parts of the island and you see the real scope of the game. Then you can forgive the perhaps dated graphics. However, one thing I would like to have seen is slightly better textures for the weapons, particularly the bladed weapons. It really does just look like, at times, like you're holding a bit of grey cardboard in your hands with some red jam on. That being said, though, it doesn't detract too much from the game, and ultimately it is the gameplay that's fun with this game. The sounds are the same sounds from the last game. However, the sounds in the last game were quite good, and they remain good to this day. They're really good for setting the tone of the game. They generally let you know if there's something or someone nearby. They're also quite good at making you feel creeped out every now and then, just to let you know that there's always something around the corner. Also, the music is slightly adapted this time. There is some different music, and there's some really great old school horror movie music in this game, and really great old school zombie film music in this game. That really does help set the setting, particularly the music you hear at the start screen. Now, the last game was known for shipping with a few bugs, and unfortunately this one is no different.
Oh, so much for the road.
Now, we didn't encounter any game-breaking bugs, but there are quite a few bugs present, such as mainly just things such as zombies clipping through the odd wall or clipping through the ground. Rather erratic and instant weather changes. 1 second you'll be walking along, it'll be bright sunshine, then all of a sudden you're walking into the animation for heavy rain, and then it can flicker back as well, rather than the smooth transition that it's meant to have, and it does at changes, and it does at times. There also is the only real bug that I really found to be an issue is every now and then if you throw a weapon, it can disappear through the ground. It's rare. It doesn't happen all the time. However, as someone who throws his weapons quite a lot, it can be quite annoying. But aside from that, I never encountered anything too game-breaking or too annoying. They're annoying little bugs, but they're nothing too big to have to fix. And quite frankly, I think they'll do away with a lot of these with a day one patch, so I wouldn't worry about them too much. The only other problem I had with the game was the UI is the same as the first game, and I never felt the UI worked in the first game for a keyboard and mouse, and it still doesn't really work very well with a keyboard and mouse now. It's clearly been designed for a controller, which the game does support. This game does support controllers from the start. However, I would have liked to have seen a UI that was a little bit more user-friendly for those with a keyboard and mouse, as there are those of us who will always prefer to use a keyboard and mouse. Ultimately though, this game is all about, as I said before, the co-op fun, and it really is that. Me and Emiholic had some fantastic moments playing throughout the game. And there's always a surprise round the corner. You really do never know when you're going to get attacked, and it can have immensely funny consequences. It's just one of those games that's just fun to play. There's nothing specific you can put your finger on. It is just a fun game to play. And surprisingly big. The maps are quite large, and although we weren't exactly speedrunning it through, we weren't spending ages going back and forth over old ground. Yet despite that, the game, I would say, takes around 25 hours to complete. So this is not a quick sort of Call of Duty session with your friends. This is quite a long game, and it will take quite a while to play through, especially seeing as it's cooperative as well. You won't be completing it in a night, unless of course you're doing some sort of main mission only speed run. I do prefer to do a lot of the side quests, however, there are those of you that might only do the main missions. And the story mode isn't bad at all. There are actually times when the story does draw you into the game further. That traditionally with this sort of game, it's generally all about the hacking and slashing and the moving on. However, the story is quite interesting at times and really does draw you in. And this game seems to be less about just getting off the island and more about actually finding Pure, with some interesting characters along the way. Ultimately, it is a game that I would most definitely recommend. I do believe it's out on Wednesday the 24th, but I will put a link below to take you to the Steam page. Ultimately, this game is going to do well regardless. Dead Island, despite some of its teething issues, was a very popular game, and I see no reason this one will be different. There are, like I say, as to recap, there really aren't that many differences from the first game, and there are still some bugs, so this is probably less of a sequel and more of a Dead Island 1.5. However, I don't think that will hamper it in the slightest. It's still an immensely fun game, and I will still be playing it after this review is done, as I'm sure Amyholic will be, and now it's just a matter of... Now it would just be easier to find a few more people to have a full cooperative session. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, then please do like, comment and subscribe, because it really does help us out in terms of search rankings. If you enjoyed the game, please do check it out as well. It's a very fun game, and it really is a fun game, and as I say, despite its issues, that really doesn't take much away from the game. It's still definitely worth playing. I'm Lord Elemental, and thank you for watching.